it was discovered in the brains of pigs. And so cerebrolysin is a phenomenal peptide because what it does is you'll find that it calms down inflammation. It also has this beautiful ability to help with focus, to help with memory. I found that it may improve cognitive and daily functioning in Alzheimer's patients. Some of the studies show it appears to reduce amyloid plaque deposition and inflammation, and it promotes neuroprotection and neural growth. What they found in Albert Einstein's brain, that he did have a certain amount of development in his brain that would suggest that maybe he had a little more density between his neurons, and so it created better pathways for signaling factors. But the other thing they found is he had more glial cells, and glial cells are what protect your neurons. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Health Accelerator Challenge and community. And today we've got some fun things we're going to cover, but I want to hear from you. How are things going in your world? Today we're going to be jumping into some of the things that are showing up on the research with cerebrolysin and Parkinson's, or cerebrolysin and Alzheimer's or dementia. And a lot of you have asked, for me to go deeper into this novel peptide called cerebrolysin. So hopefully you guys you brought your thinking caps, because we'll go deep into this one. And if you've never tried it, you may want to join us at one of our longevity retreats. Let's jump in. So if we think about what it is that will take us out when we're 80, it's not heart disease, it's not diabetes, it's not even cancer. The biggest risk that we have when we reach 80 is Alzheimer's and dementia. And so one of the peptides that I've used for just over a decade now is cerebrolysin. And this peptide is a first generation of a bioregulator peptide that mimics different pathways in the brain. It's naturally occurring. And originally it was discovered in the brains of pigs. And so cerebrolysin is a phenomenal peptide because what it does is you'll find that it calms down inflammation. It also has this beautiful ability to help with focus, to help with memory. And it's actually been studied for a long time. So a lot of these peptides, like the bioregulators, they were researched in Russia and by Dr. Kovinson, but cerebrolysin was discovered in the 1950s by scientists researching what would happen to radiation in the brain. And so what they found is they found that it promoted growth and survival of neurons. They actually were studying it with pigs' brain tissue. They found that it had these neuroprotective and neurotropic properties. They also found that not only would it help with these, in the pig model anyway, with exposure to radiation, they found that it was also protective against oxidative stress. And so it's been a peptide that was arguably one of the most popular in the clinic. And then in 2019, because this is a longer chain of amino acids, because if you think about what peptides are just protein structures. And these protein structures are sequenced together, and it's 53 amino acid chains. And so back in 2019, the FDA kind of set the line and said anything over 50 is considered a biologic and needs to be tested as a biologic. And so it's been very challenging to get, but we've recently found a great reputable source. And so I've been using it intravenously. I did my whole body makeover in May. And so I've been doing cerebrolysin every month, IVs. And so it's been phenomenal. So I'll do 5 cc's of an IV of cerebrolysin. And it's been incredibly helpful for all things. I just feel happier. I feel more relaxed mentally. I sleep a little better. And when you add that in on stem cells, it's just been a game changer for so many of our clients. Cerebral lysine, it's primarily used in Eastern Europe, and it was used in Russia, but it is phenomenal. So we're going to talk about some of the properties. So one of the studies, let me post this in the chat box. So one of the big studies for cerebral lysine is where they looked at patients who had strokes, and they found that, and let me post this for you guys. Sorry, I'm flying solo today. So if you have questions, shout pretty loud, but here's a study that you guys can take a look at, and we can post that in the show notes too, as well, for those of you who are listening to it later. But what they found is that cerebral lysine, it has brain protective properties, and one of the things that was discovered in using this peptide is they found that the cerebral lysine was able to, it's a mixture of low molecular weight peptides and amino acids. They derived it from pig's brain, and this was in 2016 when they did this study, and it was a randomized controlled trial. And what they did is they used 1,501 participants that met the criteria, and they looked at the risk versus reward benefits, and they did find that there was no significant risk versus the placebo group. They also found that there was no significant adverse reactions, and they also found that there's no fatalities, so it was non-fatal. And they found that in the cerebral lysine group versus placebo, they had moderate level of improvement from strokes versus the placebo, and so it's pretty interesting what we'll see there. The other thing that the other piece of research that we find is cerebral lysine in some of these studies. I found that it may improve cognitive and daily functioning in Alzheimer's patients. Some of the studies show it appears to reduce amyloid plaque deposition and inflammation, and it promotes neuroprotection and neural growth. In strokes, like I mentioned, it may help with recovery after stroke. Seems to be a safer treatment, to have moderate impacts. It also helps reduce inflammation and cell death, and once again, it promotes neurological functioning. Animal and human studies also show in brain trauma that cerebral lysine may speed up the recovery. And this is pretty interesting because we have a lot of athletes that we work with, and then a lot of you who have kids and grandkids. We had some of our clients, and they did a podcast with me, the Shields. The Shields, their son had a massive concussion from an automobile accident, and just wasn't, he was getting these severe migraines. It just wasn't recovering. And so Jim reached out and said, "Hey, is there anything we can do?" And so he came out and got treated by Dr. Steinley, did the intranasal stem cells, and then also did cerebral lysine. We got him on CMAX and neuro NAD, and just did a bunch of stuff to help get his brain healed. And before he even left, like the next day, his headaches were starting to alleviate. He didn't have the photosensitivity, and he also just started to thrive. He started doing better and better cognitively. And there was another girl who was in the car with him and had very similar levels of traumatic brain injury, and she's still in the recovery mode. So these treatments can be really important, and especially the earlier you can catch it. If you do happen to have like a concussion or traumatic brain injury, cerebral lysine can be incredibly helpful. And I wish I had this when I was a kid, because it probably would have been better for my teachers than even for me, because it was hard to sit still. And when it's time to focus, I could focus for only a short amount of time. But yeah, it wasn't until I actually did my brain treatment when I was at the stem cell conference with Arnold Kaplan and learned about the way to use. They were using a SphenoCath device to help, basically use a nasal mist of these umbilical cord, the perinatal tissue. And so I went back to the clinic and had it done, and it was just amazing what it did for my brain. And now, then I started adding in cerebral lysine, and it's been incredible. So here's another study. I just mentioned the one on traumatic brain injury. This is where they looked at using cerebral lysine for Parkinson's related dementia. And what they found is that by addressing the safety, first of all, and efficacy, they found that it did, in fact, improve cognitive function. It's an ongoing study. So far, it does look promising, which is why they're continuing it, because that's one of the big things with the clinical trials is it's got to be, first of all, safe. And then it's got to be effective. And then phase 3 is where it's safer and more effective than other treatments on the market. Another fascinating peptide that we're going to dive into in just a minute here is SS31. But cerebral lysine, another study they found for vascular dementia. And this is basically where you can have atrophy in your brain. And one of the cool things I get a chance to do is with the Wealth Longevity International, we're going to be hosting an event out in Austin. And we just came from Austin last week, but we're going to be doing another one at a place called the Wizard Academy. And if you guys have any interest, look up wizardacademy.org. And it's like a Harry Potter village. I was able to speak there last year. And so I'm really excited to go back. But one of the things we're doing for the participants is we're going to do a full body scan. We're working with Dr. Bill Wright and Dr. Anthony Sparks out of Advanced Imaging. In Houston, we're going to have everyone fly into Houston, get their full body scan, and then they'll get transported back to Austin to the Wizard Academy, and then we'll present their findings. I've ran blood labs on everybody. And so I'm excited for that. And there are seats. It's November 13th, 14th, and 15th. So if you'd like to join me on that, let us know, and I'll get you connected with Ashley as quick as possible. But the full body scan is interesting because what we do is we do not only the CAT scan image to show any arterial damage or any, can detect cancerous issues far earlier than most tests. And then they do a brain MRI. So we can actually, and I've seen what happens to brains when people have had traumatic brain injuries or autoimmunity or been exposed to, Lyme disease, for example. And that, or stroke, you can actually see. We had one of the participants last fall who did the full body scan. We found that he'd had like 100 little micro strokes, and it was really impacting his cognition, but nothing showed up in labs, and he was, fit by all measures, but that was pretty scary. So then we were able to start treating him, and working with Dr. Wright, we were able to see that there's some just phenomenal things that we could do. And so when he went back last September, because it's been over a year now, but it was September to September, and you could already see some regeneration occurring in his brain from one year to the next. So what they found in the trial is they found using cerebral lysine, which we used on this patient as well. We used cerebral lysine, CMAX, Selenk. I had him on Nupep and Aracetam, and right now he's just on alpha GPC, and then he's coming in for cerebral lysine IVs once a month, and his brain is back to where better than it's ever been. But this study, they found that it helped with brain atrophy, cognition, and function. Specifically for patients with subcortical vascular dementia. This and another trial, where they're looking at cerebrolysin. They found that it works on neuroprotection and growth. And it also helps with the cholinergic function. So what the cholinergic function means is acetylcholine is how we have memories, is through that pathway and that neurotransmitter. And so it works on things that are beyond that, because a lot of the drugs for Alzheimer's, like donepezil and mematine, I'm probably mispronouncing those, I apologize. It seems to outperform those because of its neuroprotective nature. And I think that, one of the big problems that we have in trying to study peptides is because you typically want to stack 2 or 3 together because it turns up the volume of the peptides, and they're pleiotropic, so you have a much better impact on them. Some of the peptides for brain health that have been studied that help with the expression of genes and proteins that are specific for the brain are the bioregulators. And many of you have been on some of the bioregulators, like the Neuro Plus is a phenomenal bioregulator, because what these peptides do is they have immunomodulatory effects, and they work on the glial cells. And one thing that's kind of interesting is Albert Einstein, when he passed away in his 70s, he wanted to be cremated. He didn't want to be buried. The mortician actually took his brain and took chunks of his brain. It's kind of weird, and like hid it. What they found is finally he would release sections of Albert Einstein's brain. I know it sounds morbid, but this is a true story. And so what they found in Albert Einstein's brain, that he did have a certain amount of development in his brain that would suggest that maybe he had a little more density between his neurons. And so it created better pathways for signaling factors. But the other thing they found is he had more glial cells, and glial cells are what protect your neurons. And so bioregulators also protect your neurons. So maybe if we want to be like Einstein, then we can take some bioregulators and some cerebrolysin. But actually, I think one of the most powerful things with Albert Einstein, I just finished reading another book on him, and it's just his curiosity. I mean, if you look at, he was very curious, but he also was very intentional and deliberate about the science. Great human being overall. Some of the bioregulators, what they do is they work on epidermal growth factor. So these peptide bioregulators specifically work on the nerve cells and muscle cells. Peptide bioregulators can activate your fibroblast growth factors, and they also transform the growth factor beta. So transforming growth factor beta is really important for differentiating stem cells. There's phenomenal things that they do for IGF-1. They also have neurotropins in them. And cerebrolysin, you could almost, because it's naturally occurring in our brains, you can almost consider it to be a bioregulator, but you can add other bioregulators like the NeuroPlus formula, even adding in like NuPep, aniracetam, acetylcholine, or acetylcholine. Those are going to be great as well, so that you have all the substrates that you need. So the other peptide that's phenomenal when you look at what is happening in the world of Alzheimer's and neurodegeneration is if for those of you who have ever taken SS31, it's a phenomenal peptide, and it's one that I've spoken about several times. But SS31 is right now it's in the clinical stages, phase 3, and so I'll share with you guys. I'm going to share my screen here so you guys can see this. I just actually was presenting on this in Austin, and how cool of a peptide this is overall. So here's MOTS-c, and many of you have heard me talk about MOTS-c. Here's SS31, which is, everyone's really excited about this. And what it does is it repairs the inside of the mitochondria. So if you think of Alzheimer's, usually we think we got to get rid of that amyloid plaque and get rid of that type 3 diabetes. And then, but a lot of times we fail to realize that a lot of Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, neurodegenerative diseases are an energy crisis. And so if you can stack like cerebral lysine and then SS31, MOD-SC, methylene blue, and then make sure IGF-1 is activated, because IGF-1 is the key that unlocks BDNF, which is what creates neuroplasticity. And so SS31 is a really phenomenal mitochondrial peptide. And the research, this one specifically, it shows that it works with diabetes and Alzheimer's, because what it does is it helps get rid of some of that amyloid beta aggregation, which is causing synaptic damage. So the synaptic damage, that's where the neurons just aren't firing properly. It helps with the hyperglycemia. So hyperglycemia is too much sugar in the brain where you've got insulin resistance because the sugar is not going into the neurons. And that's where you have a real energy crisis. It also works with the calcium dyshomeostasis, which creates a lot of oxidative stress. So when you can't get, and this is what I was mentioning earlier, the acetylcholine, when you don't have the right ions in the brain, and the calcium ions is what it creates, that what's called actin potential. So you can generate ATP in the mitochondria. SS31 has been shown to help resolve that. One of the things that they found is that lower doses helps maintain intact mitochondria and normal gene expression of the antioxidant enzyme. So this is where, if you can use like the glutastat, like the glutathione nasal spray, can be really important if you're trying to protect your brain. Even the neural NAD. And yes, we do have it back into the clinic. I know there was like a month there we couldn't get it, but Dr. Laurence pulled through for us. So we've got a ton of those in the office. So make sure you use those on a regular basis. They also found that higher doses of SS31 combined with mitochondrial division inhibitors showed positive effects on Alzheimer's disease treatment. They found that SS31 has neuroprotective effects. It improves mitochondrial function in neurological diseases. They also found that SS31 results in positive outcome in mouse models of headaches, cognitive impairment, muscle aging, and other conditions. And so this is published in the Pharmacological Research, Volume 171, September 21. So check it out. Here's some of the graphs where they induced acute kidney disease and acute kidney trauma to mice. And in using SS31, they found that it was able to actually start reversing some of the damage to the kidneys. I found that if you add it with MOD-SC, what we've seen and what I've experienced personally is when you use these together, and this is a stack I'm just getting my wife on, because she's one that I love it when she'll say, "Wait, what have I been taking?" And that's when I know it's like, this is really good. And so for years, she's been kind enough and trusting enough so that I can, I experiment on myself first, and obviously do the research. And then I will basically I just fill up my wife's peptide syringes for her. And I know I'm onto something. Like one of her favorite stacks is when I combined MOD-SC with ARA 290. And that's when she actually she was like, man, I'm sleeping great. I recover fast. She's super fit. She's a Pilates instructor, and then does a bunch of, I have to remind her to take a day off on her exercise and not push so hard, but that's like her, she's very devoted to her health, which is super impressive. And so I just try to keep her optimized, and these are some that she loves. So I'll let you guys know how she does with the SS31. I've seen huge things. I've given her it off and on just a little bit, but I'm stacking it SS31 with MOD-SC and Sermorelin for her. She's also using some LDN. Tasha got her on LDN, and she really feels good when she wakes up in the morning from the low dose naltrexone. And the other thing is SS31, they found it increases tolerance to exercise. So you can go harder, longer, you feel great, more motivated to exercise is the biggest thing on these mitochondrial peptides. So ModSC, SS31, 5-amino-1-MQ. I'm trying a new one called Humanin, and they're just great. The only problem is that there's not enough time to exercise, and then luckily we have like thymosin beta-4 to help recovery. But what it does, it also improves cardiac mitochondrial dysfunction. It ameliorates kidney disease, ameliorates oxidative stress. So a lot of cool things. When it comes to our brains, it's arguably, if I had to choose one organ system that was most important, I'd definitely say the brain. Hopefully today you realize there's some really cool therapies out there that we can use. I mentioned 3. There's cerebrolysin, there's peptide bioregulators, and then there's the mitochondrial peptides, but specifically SS31. Those 2 have been studied probably the most for neurodegenerative diseases. So hopefully that is helpful. I know you guys are just amazing, and I know you guys have been diving in and really studying these things. So the challenge for the week is for you to figure out what your brain peptide stack is. And if you need help, don't hesitate to email me or email one of our providers, one of our peptide experts, and we'll make sure that you've got, you'll notice in your formulations, whenever we put together your peptide protocols, there are peptides specifically for the brain. But if you're interested in what those are, just talk to us and we'll show you how they all relate. So appreciate you guys, and we will see you next week. Thanks for being such amazing humans. I appreciate you guys, and we'll talk soon. Take care. Bye-bye.